Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where today I will be taking a look at the Object 477A Molot. For those of you short on time, here is my very quick overview. The 477 plays a lot like the Tier 10 FV4215B 183. It is a tank destroyer with limited turret traverse, a gun that can hit very hard but it's not brilliantly accurate, the gun depression is poor, and comparatively speaking, its hull traverse is poor when compared to other Era 3 vehicles. The features that set it aside from the 183 playstyle are the secondary 30mm cannon and its armour. It's incredibly strong from the front, but it has weak sides and rear. And the 30mm cannon with gold rounds loaded mean you can shred anyone close to you with their weak points exposed. The question is it worth the 15,900 gold price tag? That's near on £57, and I am leaning towards no. It's not a solid no, because the 477 is a good tank, but for me, if I want to play an Era 3 tank destroyer that won't be bankrupting me, I'm going to take out the Weasel. And if you don't have the Weasel, it's likely you've got the Thumper. Okay. Let's take a look at the 477 and compare it directly to the TDs around it. It is a premium, and the only other non-ATGM tank destroyer premium in Era 3 is the Thumper. So this is not going to be a comparison to the Weasel, because that's just a completely different playstyle. That's ATGMs only, that's completely different type of vehicle. Without crew or equipment, the 477 has 900mm of pen on its standard rounds, and they will do an average of 760 alpha each. The Thumper has 854mm of pen on its standard rounds, and these rounds will have an average alpha of 700 each. The 477 has 3,750 hit points, which is identical to the Thumper. The 477 has an unboosted top speed of 75 km an hour, while the Thumper maxes out at 68. The 477 has a view range of 505 meters and a concealment distance of 483 meters, while the Thumper has 525 meters and 473 meters respectively. So the new premium, the 477, has higher pen, higher alpha, and it's faster. You could be forgiven for calling that the definition of premium power creep, but I do think that we need to note that the Thumper it was a season reward tank, so that does need to be taken into consideration, because, well, I mean, we paid 6,000 gold for the Thumper. The 477 is almost triple that, so of course I would expect more for my money. That said though, paying almost 16,000 gold for a premium is a huge ask from Wargaming, and the problem I have now is this. It's very difficult for me to say that you guys should spend that kind of money on a tank that plays like the 477 when the Weasel exists. I had no problem at all telling people to buy the Weasel because it's great fun to play, it earns you a huge amount of silver in almost every game, and on release it cost only just under 11,000 gold. And the Weasel is hands down absolutely worth the money. But even at 11,000 gold, that felt like it was a lot to ask for even then. The 477 is almost 16,000. And honestly, I just don't see that being worth it. If the prices were the other way around, if the Weasel was 16,000 and the 477 11,000, I would say, yeah, it's worth it because, you know, the extra you get with the Weasel, the Weasel is just so much better in every single way. Don't get me wrong, the 477 is a great tank destroyer in its own right, in its own way. If you play it right, it is superb, and it looks pretty cool as well. I mean, the tank designers they've done a great job with this tank, but the cost of it is just ridiculous. This tank is worth, what I would say it's worth maybe 10,000 gold, but almost 16. No, sorry. This tank is just way too much for what it is because of the premiums around it, and sadly that does seem to be the theme of some of my tank reviews. You know, this heavy is good but it's not a 4211, this TD is good but it's not a Weasel. Anyway, I will stop defecating on Wargaming's procession, but anyway, here we go. I'm going to spend some time now talking about some of the softer stats, and maybe we'll get into some details here that will sway it for those people that do have the money. So, the 477 does have an incredible silver boost, coming in at 65%. It has a 10% tank XP boost, 4% free XP boost, and a 10% crew XP boost. If you prefer to play hull down tank destroyers, then the 477 will suit your playstyle, and it will earn you good silver in the process, especially if you put your 2x silver boosts on. Some of the limiting factors of the 477 though are the 0.35 accuracy, which comes with some awful Sigma, I must add. This gun brings back memories of playing the KV2. I mean, you'll be fully aimed, but that doesn't mean that the shot will go anywhere near where you want it to. You know, you'll pull the trigger and it's like rolling the dice. Is it gonna hit the ground? Is it gonna fly up into the air? Is it gonna hit the target? It's anybody's guess. You never know. It also has 6 degrees of gun depression, and it only has 140 degrees of turret traverse, so that's 70 degrees right, 70 degrees left. Now, the 6 degrees of gun depression, I feel, is a problem, because while you have great armor at the front, and you've got a very narrow turret, you don't have the gun depression to actually use ridgelines effectively, or as effectively as you'd like to. So, it's like we have great stuff with this tank, but then some pretty bad stuff as well, which sort of counters the good stuff, and that seems to be the overall impression I get from this. Is like, it's great in some areas, but it's terrible in others. But if what I've said, if this tank does sound like it's of interest to you, then by all means, go ahead and spend the money on it. Before I close this one out though, I'm going to add a little segment here at the end due to high demand, and that is, how do you kill a 477? Well, think of it as a Leopard 2A5. Very strong at the front, very weak at the sides and rear. The bonus for you here though is that while the 2A5 has a fully traversable turret, like I've just mentioned, the 477 doesn't. It's only got 70 degrees right, 70 degrees left. If you can sit behind it and stay behind it, you are safe from the 900mm of pen that comes out the angry end of its boomstick. The 477 also only has 30 degrees of hull traverse per second. The Thumper has 34, so that gives you an idea of how slow this thing can be to traverse on the spot. It's not very quick, so even if the 477 does try to turn and face you, if you're behind it or to the side, if it tries to turn and face you, it can't get the turret around to point the gun at you, and it can't traverse that well. So really, you know, you've got quite the advantage. If you're close to it and you can stay behind it, then you've got the advantage there. Other weak points, well, that's the sides and rear, obviously. But if you're in a situation where you're stuck in front of this thing, which you, quite honestly, you really don't want to be stuck in front of this thing, because the frontal armor of the 477 is incredible. So do not make fighting this thing front on your first choice. If you can get around the sides and rear, do that. But if you are in a situation where you are front on, you can't get around the sides, you can aim for the turret ring. It's not an easy shot to hit, but it is a frontal weak point. And also, the very bottom edge of the front lower plate only has 80mm of armor. But again, that is a tough shot to hit, but if you can hit it, that is a frontal weak spot. But as I've just said, you are much better off trying to get around the sides and rear of this thing. Okay folks, that's about all I have for this one. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, if not a dislike, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.